Cool. Well, for everybody listening right now, this is super exciting for me this week. Longtime friend, amazing actor, over 100 films, just to name a few, because we literally don't have time today. Saving Bobby Fischer, The Godfather Part 3, Celebrity, Forget Paris, Liberty Heights. Um, you know, Huge passion for the arts, Emmy Award winning, Tony Award winning, Joe Mantegna. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave. My pleasure.
Yeah, I know that was a little abbreviated, but it's nice to know that it's abbreviated, right?
Oh, no. Hey, look, at my age, I take whatever I can get. That's all good.
You and I actually met through the Sinatra Foundation and being on the board of that for 10 years. At least I was.
Right.
And the long time run there, and that's how we met. But this whole show is about the big ideas and big moments in your career or someone's career where they just went to the next level, or you had that big idea moment. Because I think a lot of people don't realize in the arts that there are those moments, and where you have a responsibility to recognize what's in front of you as an actor, and also work that opportunity. But you grew up in Chicago, and I found it pretty fascinating that you actually played in a band.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just at dinner last night with David Foster and his wife, and with my wife and I and some friends, and we were talking about that because he did a lot of stuff with Peter Cetera, who was the lead singer and the bass player for Chicago. And he knew I'd met David years ago because I was very close to the band Chicago because our band used to tour with that band. Before they were even called Chicago, they were called the Missing Link.
That was Apocryphals, is that how it was pronounced?
The Apocryphals, yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
So this was like so we were a good cover band in Chicago in the mid to late 60s. And the grand band Chicago at the time were called the Missing Links. And there was three guys. It was Terry Kath, Walter Perezader, and Danny Serafin, who ultimately were the drummer, sax player, and actually Terry at the time was the bass player for the band. But then they moved him up to lead guitar, and then they hired four other guys, which we thought they were crazy to do. Like, why would you take a three-piece band and add four guys? You're not going to make any money. Are you guys nuts? So of course, then when their first album came out, it was like, oh, they're not so nuts. And then I realized and I thought maybe we're nuts. And that's when I realized we were, like I said, we were a good cover band, but that's when I was right around that time when their first album came out, was when I got cast in to play Hair in Chicago. And I had to make that decision. Do I continue as a rock and roll guy, or do I go into musical theater, which I had been kind of pursuing in high school, junior college?
And so I wondered about that, if that was a big idea moment for you, because, and I also have another question, like, what instrument did you play? Were you vocals as well?
Yeah, no, I was the lead. I was the bass guitar player, and I was the lead singer, and there was, I did it for 5 years, and we did well. I mean, we always worked. Like I said, we made a couple records. They marginal airplay in the Midwest, but nothing really big. But we were a good cover band, a steady band. We made steady money, and so you talk about that big idea moment. I mean, all during that time, though, I was still pursuing being an actor. I mean, I was going to acting school. I went to the Goodman School of Drama I was in my second year. And I just finished my second year. I was about to start my third year, which had been my final year, when I tried out for this musical Hair, got cast, and then was caught in, well, not a quandary, but I was at that crossroads of like, okay, now here you have to face this. What's it going to be? But I really felt my heart was I'd done theater in high school and junior college, and now at the Goodman, and I'd done musicals before in junior college, and I thought, this is kind of really where my heart is, and I think I knew in my heart that I love being in the band and I love the guys, but I just didn't think, and I think we all realized it too, that we We didn't have that extra thing to create our own music, to write songs, to be anything more than maybe a very good cover band. And so that's when I made that decision. And I got to say, though, for a couple of years, I wasn't sure I made the right decision, because after Hair, I kind of banged around a little bit and didn't make anywhere near the money I made when I was in the band. But then I got into the musical Godspell, and then that was okay.
Yeah, so it took a couple of years to bounce around on the idea. How much time did you have to process the decision based on being cast in Hair, though?
Not a lot of time, because it was a long audition process. In other words, there was something like 4,000 people auditioned for that play, because the play was, you got to remember, you wouldn't maybe know, I mean, but at that time, this was 1969. The play Hair was the biggest thing on the planet on Broadway, in terms of, it was like Rent, but it kind of became that later. Grease became that, but Hair was a phenomenon, and so like 4,000 young people tried out for that play, and they kept whittling it down on the callbacks. So I did something like 3, maybe up to 5 callbacks. Before that final callback, they must have had like 60 of us on stage, and then of that 60, they picked something like 30. And I think I was that last one of the 30. They said, "Would you please step out of the line?" And then I did, and they said, "Okay, you are now the cast of Hair." So I didn't have a lot of time, because that basically I was cast, and I think they were going to say, "Okay, we start rehearsals in a week." And so now I had to kind of make that decision. Now, I didn't have to leave the band instantly, because we were going to go into rehearsal and stuff. But the guys all knew. I mean, the guys all knew that if this did happen, I was probably gonna have to move on, and it was okay. It was not a. Right. I didn't leave them totally in the dark.
Well, it's a big moment, and you had that idea that's like, okay, where's this going to go? It's transitional. We all go through those. And I think there's truth to this, that you actually were in the film industry. You actually started off as a photographer taking headshots?
Yes. Well, you know what? Yeah, because the thing is, when you're aspiring to be let's say an actor, or probably any of the arts really, or you better have in place that secondary job, which may in a way be your primary job for God knows how long. In other words, if you, and I know a lot of people like the standard job for like aspiring actors is like to be a waiter or waitress, because of the flexible hours, so you can go to auditions, and that's true, and that's good. But I knew I'd make a bad waiter. I mean, it just wasn't in my DNA to kind of do that. But luckily, when I was doing Hair, one of the girls in the play, in fact, her name was Ulla Hedwig. Her name now is Ulla Hedwig. She was one of the backup singers for Bette Midler for many years, one of the Harlettes. But at the time, her real name was Ursula Slagowski, who was in the play Hair. And her boyfriend, nice Polish girl from Chicago. And to this day, she's a wonderful girl, and still does backup singing, I think, maybe even for Bette. But anyway, her boyfriend was a professional photographer, and used to take pictures of like the mayor's office in Chicago and the Chicago Symphony. So he was a big time photographer, as it turned out. And I had an interest in photography, and he taught me, while I was even doing Hair, how to take the perfect headshot. In other words, how to really, the lighting, this, that, and the other, what kind of equipment to use. And I was fascinated by all that. And so I started tinkering around with that. And then when the lean years came, like after Hair, after Godspell, especially when I moved out to California from Chicago, and I was kind of like starting over in many ways, I needed that job. I needed a way to make just a living. And so I put together a portfolio. I made business cards, photography by Joe Mantegna. And I was nobody, really. I mean, outside of having done those plays, but certainly in the world of Hollywood, I was nobody. And I started to get work, and I enjoyed it, because I was working for myself. I was self-employed. You make your own hours, and it's an art form. I mean, I really felt that I got it down pretty well, how to take a very good kind of headshot that people would need. And it was interesting, because I would go into these big agencies, work for some of these agents to do their clients, like CAA and William Morris and ICM, who would never in a million years see me as an actor, because I was Joe Nobody. But there was like, "Oh yes, call Joe," and take a picture of, you know, so and so and so and so. And I would never tell them. I would never tell the guy or woman I was taking the picture that I was an aspiring actor. The last thing they want to hear is, what the hell? I hired this guy as a photographer and he wants to be an actor too. So I never was open about that. But I did that for, you know, I would say certainly 4 or 5 years before, you know, then the big break happened with a play I did ultimately on Broadway that changed my life.
And I think when you had that break on Broadway, that seemed to be like a vision, dream come true, and that was Stephen Schwartz, right? The musical of Stud to Kell's Working.
Well, that was my first Broadway show. That was Working with Stephen Schwartz, which I did in 1978. But that was actually prior to me moving to California. So in other words, I did that, and I'd hoped that was going to be the vehicle. And I had 2 songs on the album that James Taylor wrote. So I mean, I really thought my career was going to be a musical comedy guy. And I thought, well, if the show's a hit, you know, then this might be my ticket. I'd already done Hair, I'd done Godspell, but now I'm on. But those were the Chicago companies in a national tour. But this was Broadway, and I thought this is going to be it. Well, the show only ran a month. You know, it wasn't a big hit. It was good musical. The music was good. I'm glad I got 2 songs on the album. But the show was basically a flop. So then we moved to California, and it was in California where I really did the photography business. And I moved out here in 1978, and it was in 1984 or 83. So it's actually 6 years banging around California, doing little bits on this, doing theater, doing guest shots on a soap. I was on the series Soap. I did 8 episodes as this character one. You know, I did a bunch of little stuff. I did the Archie Bunker's Place, a thing. Did plays that I had done in Chicago with a group, the Organic Theater. But it was in 1983 when I get the call from my dear friend David Mamet, who I had worked with in Chicago on various things, because he was a struggling playwright while I was a struggling actor in Chicago. His star was starting to ascend because he had opened a production of, ironically, American Buffalo, which they're doing a revival of right now with Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Rockwell. But this was the original production in New York with Robert Duvall. And Mamet calls me and says, I've got a new play called Glengarry Glen Ross. We're going to open it in Chicago. It might go to Broadway. We're hoping. I'd love you to play this one part in it. And I'm like, so here I am in California, banging around. My wife and I were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Studio City, and it was okay. I was working enough to get by, pay the rent, you know, and when I was not working, I'd go on unemployment. But I thought, well, no, Dave, a new play, you know, let's go. Sure, we'll come to Chicago and see what happens. Well, that was the one that changed my life, because, of course, we go to Chicago, the play runs there, we take it now to New York, and well, actors' dreams started to come true, because within that few months, the show gets nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, wins the Pulitzer Prize, and I win the Tony Award. And so it's like bang, bang. It was like an actor's dream comes true.
Right? When you won the Tony Award, it probably seemed like longer, but really time-wise it wasn't that long after. But then that had a set of legs too, right? Because that went from, you were the original cast on Broadway there, and I think if my memory serves me right, you actually bounced, that actually had another run later on with Richard Dreyfuss in LA, right?
Oh, it had. Well, I did it with Dreyfuss as we did the audio version of it for, you know, for whatever they use it or to put. So I did that with him. But no, there's been subsequent productions of it. 10 years after I did it, Liev Schreiber did it on Broadway, and then 10 years after that, Pacino did it, but playing the part of Shelley Levine, which is, because in the movie he played the part of Ricky Roma, which is the role that I did on Broadway. But then Pacino did a revival 10 years after that. So there's been 3 versions of it on Broadway. I did the initial one. Liev Schreiber did the second one. It was the headlining guy, and Pacino was the headlining guy in the third one.
What with all your Broadway success, like, you know, I know for myself, when I was studying acting, I did it, and I performed at the Birdcage Theater at Knott's Berry Farm, and that was a test of melodrama to the finest. But I didn't care for it. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
I gravitated towards television. But what is it about Broadway that you loved the most? Because it's a gift.
Well, it wasn't so much Broadway as it was the theater. In fact, I have to say this, my wife and I, we've been together over 50 years now. I mean, and as it turned out, we knew each other during high school, junior college days, but we weren't dating. We actually met when we both got cast in the play Hair. And the reason that's important is because that production of Hair, as I told you, 4,000 plus young people tried out for it. At one time, 4 of the leads in that show all came from the high school I went to, or the neighboring high school, which was Morton East High School in Cicero, Illinois, and Morton West High School in Berwyn, Illinois. And the reason being, the drama department at those 2 schools, the head of the theater department and all the teachers at both schools, was the most incredible training ground anybody could have ever had, just by the luck of the draw. Because there's no reason why it should have been. It wasn't like it was a hotbed of theater, in the Midwest. We were just, Cicero, Illinois is famous for Al Capone. That's their claim to fame. But this theater department was so good that when I first walked on a Broadway stage, I looked around and I thought, wow, I'm finally on Broadway, but this theater is actually a little smaller than our auditorium in Cicero, because we were in this beautiful thing called the Cole Auditorium, which was built back in, like, I think the 20s. And it was this huge, like 2,500 seat, beautiful theater. And that's where we would do plays. And both my wife and I would talk about auditioning for those plays back then. And we said it was harder to get cast in those plays than it was to get cast in Hair or any subsequent things I did, because the level of competition, was so great, and so many kids tried out for the shows, and they treated it so professionally, the teachers there, that it was the perfect training ground. So you ask what it was like being on Broadway. It was like, very exciting for me. Of course, like winning a Tony Award was like a dream come true, because I used to watch the Tonys when I was an acting student, thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great to be that guy? And then, of course, then all of a sudden I become that guy. But I have to say, I was greatly prepared for it by that training, and then also all the subsequent things I did, working with this group, the Organic Theater, like I said, for 5 years in Chicago, where we did all kinds of different plays, new plays, stuff we created ourselves. So I remember when I won the Tony, I remember at the party they have afterwards, somebody in the press, I got to remember, I'd started professionally, like I said, 1969 with Hair. I won the Tony in 1984. So somebody asked me, said, wow, what's it like to win a Tony Award? I said, you know what it's like? It's like winning the lottery, but I've been buying tickets for 15 years, So in a way, you pay your dues. I mean, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I paid them on the front end, because you don't avoid paying your dues, I don't think, in any business. But if you pay them too early, maybe without a lot of experience, and you're not prepared, it's like winning the lottery. You always hear about people who win, like some guy buys one ticket, wins $50 million, and then you find out a year later he's broke and homeless and drug addicted. It's because they weren't prepared for wealth. It's like, you can't go from 0 to 100 instantly and expect to have no ramification of that. So, I mean, I had 15 years of experience, so that when that moment came for me, that you talk about the big idea, when that moment I was ready for it. In other words, the door opened for me, and I said, I'm coming in, and I'm closing the door behind me. I'm not going back.
How many of you have actually been thinking about a backyard makeover? Do you wish you had room for a pool? Well, you're going to love this idea, and your family and friends, they're going to love it too. Get a Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. A Michael Phelps Swim Spa combines the benefits of a pool with the therapy of a hot tub. It comes in a variety of sizes to complement almost any yard, even if it's a small backyard. Michael Phelps Swim Spas by Master Spas have a water current, so you can swim, do aquatic exercises, and have fun with the kids. This will reinvent family time. The water buoyancy will relieve pressure on aching joints, and you can enjoy pure relaxation in the massage therapy seats of the swim spa. And since it's heated, you can use it year-round in any climate. Michael Phelps Swim Spas are 100% made in the USA by Master Spas, the world's largest swim spa manufacturer. You're going to love your Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. Go to masterspas.com, put in the promo code Big Idea to save $1,000 on a Michael Phelps Swim Spa or $500 on a Master Spas hot tub. That's masterspas.com, promo code Big Idea.
You're a longtime baseball fan, and I didn't know this, but discovered that you conceived and co-wrote Bleacher Bums for Broadway.
Right. That's right.
And the root of that was growing up in Chicago and go to Wrigley Field, right?
Absolutely. Well, here I was, an aspiring actor. I'm like 19 years old, going to acting school, and I'd go sit in the bleachers because it's all I could afford at Wrigley Field. It was like 75 cents to get in back then. But I was fascinated by the fact that here was a team that was terrible.
How
it had
much?
been terrible. I think 75 cents might have been $1.25. Yeah, but this is like I'm talking 1966. 1966. But what I was fascinated by was here's a team that's basically a terrible baseball team, but there's 35,000 people in here screaming, yelling, having a good time, and around me it was like theater. Guys making bets, this happening, ladies' day, the girls there getting a suntan, they could care less about the baseball game. And I thought, if I could get a play about these people, these fans, and they're diverse. You got the guy who's got a lot of money, and you got the guy who's basically penniless, and you got black and white, and male and female, all different religions. But the moment that they're here, they are all united. They're all one to watch this mediocre team. And then when the game's over, they all go their own separate way. And I thought, if I could write a play that has that same appeal, we'll have the biggest hit in the world. Because what's that thing about fandom and following the underdog? And there's something to it. So when I broached the theater company with the idea, I said, look, I got this idea for a play called Bleacher Bums, and it'll all take place in the bleachers. And if you guys come with me to where I sit, and you tell me if you don't think there's a play there. And it was the end of our season. All our grant money was gone. We needed to do a play that cost us nothing. And I thought, this play, you do come to the play dressed like you're going to a baseball game, and we all sit in like bleachers, and the audience will sit and look at us like we're in the bleachers. And so that's what we did. I brought them to the game where I sat for 3 days in a row. And Stuart Gordon, he passed away a few years ago, but our wonderful director, went on to direct a lot of those movies like Reanimator and things like that. Wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That was his creation. But anyway, they all agreed. They said, yeah, there's a play here. And so we worked on it. We did improv for hours and hours, taped it. We brought in a friend of Stuart's named Dennis Paoli to be the guy to kind of take all of our improvisations and try to structure it into a play. And the play opened in 1977 in Chicago. It was a huge hit. And we took it off Broadway. And it's been, I still get like residual checks from they'll be doing it on the Army base in Malta or something, or summer stock all over, they'll do. But since the Cubs won the World Series, it's not quite so topical as it was, because it's all about that fandom of following the losers no matter what. I mean, that's the crux of the play. But the way the Cubs are playing now, I think we might become viable again. So we'll see.
Well, that led to PBS getting involved.
Right. We filmed it. And Dennis Franz is in that original version.
Oh, bless his heart. Yeah.
The great Dennis Franz from NYPD. He was in that company. I'm sorry?
And that was an Emmy Award as well?
Yeah, we won the Emmy Award for live to whatever. They had a special category for because they basically we filmed the play for PBS. It wasn't live, but they filmed it as if it was a production of the play. So we won an Emmy Award back then I think we did that version in 1980, the film version of it.
I think that's a testimonial right there of, a vision, sitting there, understand there's another big idea moment that you had a vision. You're sitting there encapsulating the environment. We all do it, but you executed it. You did it. And I think that's been synonymous in your career. You've recognized opportunities and you've secured them. And we talked about that early on. Now you've done over 100 films, and we're obviously going to talk about the big run that you've recently had for the last 15 years on television. But when did you decide to actually go into films, or did films choose you?
It did. I never ever thought of it in terms of I want to be a film actor, or I want to be a TV actor, or I want to be a theater actor. Honest to God, it really came down to the environment. In other words, I grew up in Chicago. I lived in Chicago. I loved Chicago. Did theater there. Went to New York. Did a couple things there. But I always hated the winter. I mean, I just never liked the snow. And then when I went with our theater company, The Organic, twice we toured Europe. And on the second tour, once in 74 and again in 1975. In 75, I was able to kind of do my roots journey, I call it, because I went to Italy to visit these relatives I had always heard about that we had in southern Italy. And my wife and I, that's the year we got married too, in 75. So after the tour we did with the theater company, we're making $100 a week. I'm talking about doing theater in Holland and Germany and Belgium and England. So, a very small little theater company out of Chicago, The Organic. So we go to Italy, and I discovered all these these relatives, and now I'm in southern Italy, and it's late October, early November, and the weather is like it is here in California, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's probably snowing in Chicago right now. And then I'm starting to think, no wonder I gravitate to this kind of environment. It's in my DNA. It's in my genes. So after that trip to Italy, I said to myself, God, I just think that's where I'm supposed to be, in that kind of environment. So part of that tour that we did right after the European tour, we toured California with these plays, Bleacher Bums among them. We came out to here in Los Angeles. We played San Francisco, up at Berkeley. We did La Jolla. We came to LA. And that's when I said to myself, you know what? I want to be an actor, but but I think you got to be happy where you are, your environment. And the idea of going back to Chicago and struggling through the winter and all that, I said, we did it. We've done it. Let's give this a shot. And my wife was on board for it. But it wasn't that thing of like, I want to be a movie star. I want to be a TV star. I know they did theater in LA too. And I thought, hey, if the worst comes to worst, I'll just be an itinerant actor. But at least we can go to the beach in January. Can't do that in Chicago. Let's give that a shot. And that's really what started it. I mean, and so once I got here and got settled here, I as much as I love Chicago and I'll always be Chicagoan, in my heart, I really just feel I belong in this kind of Italian-esque kind of world that is what California offered. And to this day, I still feel that way.
One of my favorites that you did, it goes back a ways to 1998, was the Rat Pack, and it's kind of personal for me because as I met you later on, probably the better part of 12 years ago now, but here I am working with the Sinatra Foundation. You did the Rat Pack. Here's Tommy Dreesen, working with everybody, doing some stuff on the stage, and it's kind of fun to connect at that level. But a lot of people, well, I don't know how many people know, but you're a tremendous philanthropist. You give back in so many ways. But yet you had this connection with Sinatra and Dreesen and all that stuff. And it was like, obviously we can talk another hour about that, but, just kind of briefly, how did you feel about that transition? Because you're doing that, and then that relationship went on for at least 25 years that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I grew up with the Rat Pack in my life because my parents. I'm an Italian family, so listening to Sinatra and Tony Bennett and that kind of music was just part of that's the songbook of my life, So I remember I was doing the movie Baby's Day Out in Chicago. We were filming it, and Tommy Dreesen was there doing a charity event, and so. I went to the charity event since I was in town anyway. I was like, hey, Tommy and I knew each other. That's what Tommy said to me. He says, do you play golf? And I said, well, I used to play. My dad played, but my dad passed away fairly young, and I kind of never got back into the game. And he said, well, there's this Frank Sinatra celebrity golf tournament that I host every year. And I know they would love to have you. You just come and play, and then Frank sings at the event. And I was like, really? I said, wow. So I actually went and borrowed clubs and shoes from Dan Loria, who I know you also know. Yeah, he had an extra pair of gloves, all the equipment. I hadn't played golf in 20 years at that point, or at least 10 years anyway. And I went just for nothing else, because to meet Frank Sinatra, to hear him sing live and all that, I didn't care about the damn golf game. As it turned out, I mean, as luck would have it, it's a 2-day event, as you know. On the second, I had a high handicap because I was starting to pick it up again, things I had remembered as a young man. But on the second day, I rotated into the team that was way in first place. And as it turned out, we won that tournament that year, my first year at the Sinatra. So next thing I know, they're calling me up in the hotel room saying, you got to come down for photos. You're on the winning team. I didn't even know we won. They say, and you're going to take pictures with Mr. Sinatra. I'm like, holy Christ. And I said, this is, talk about a dream come true. So now I go down, and not only is Sinatra there, but Tony Bennett is there, because Tony was going to be the other singer at the event, that particular one. I think it was 93, I think it was. But anyway, so next thing I know, I'm standing between Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett and the Palm Springs press are taking pictures, and I say, how does it feel, Mr. Mantegna? I go, how does it feel? I'm in Italian heaven. I'm standing between Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra.
I love
and then, as it turned out, a few years later, I get offered the part of Dean Martin to play, to do the movie, The Rat Pack. And so, and while I got to know Frank a little bit because of the golf tournament, I had never met Dean, but I idolized him so much. And I was almost afraid to take the role because of that. But I thought to myself, I got to do it. I mean, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, and I'll kill myself. I hate myself for not having given it a shot. So I did all the much research I could possibly do, read every article about him, watched footage, listened to songs, did everything I could to prepare for it. And it's certainly to this day one of if I was to name my 5 favorite roles I've played in my life, getting to play Dean Martin was it. And fortunately for me, I got nominated for both an Emmy and a Golden Globe for that role, which was the only thing good about that was it at least made me felt like, okay, maybe there was some justification in the sense that that I did okay. And then I get to be very close to Dean Martin's daughter, Dina, through that whole thing. And so it just gave me that feeling of I didn't embarrass myself, and hopefully there are people out there who at least enjoyed it, and so that's all I needed.
So we'll kind of fast forward quite a bit, to Criminal Minds,
right,
and what an amazing run. I mean, 15 seasons, incredible show. How did that show come to you via casting? Because I personally wanted to kind of know how that show happened, because it was a brilliant mind, but you ran that. I mean, my gosh, 15 seasons. It's an incredible run.
Yeah. Well, it's ironic. I was doing. First of all, let me put it this way. I was prior to that. I was doing a lot of obviously was casting a lot of movies. And the movies took us all over the world, which was wonderful. I mean, I've shot movies in Moscow, stuff I've shot in Australia. I've shot all over Europe, Italy, all over the United States. But, my wife and I, like I said, we've been together for many, many years, and we had children. Now, my oldest daughter has autism. She's now 35 years old, and she lives with us, and she will continue to do so until, we're no longer here. But at some point, she'll have to have some sort of live in a protected environment, because it's she's high functioning. She's a beautiful girl and smart in many ways, but still could never really be totally independent. So that's always been a factor in our family life. And it was great when all the kids were little, and I have a younger daughter, Gia. And we would, because of that, the fact that change is very difficult sometimes, especially with somebody with autism at a young age. It's like you don't want to upset the apple cart any more than you have to. So we made a decision early on. Everybody goes wherever Daddy goes. Everybody goes. So when I did all this work all over the world, everybody went. Even if I was on location for a week in Moscow, everybody went. That was part of my deal. I'll take less money, but you got to give me the plane tickets. That was the deal. But as the kids got older, and you start to realize it's not always going to work that way. Now they have responsibilities they have to do. There's schooling, there's this, that, and the other. And so it got to the point where I realized, I thought to myself, I have to change my lifestyle, and it's okay. If I never go on to another location by myself again, I can live with that. And so the idea of getting on a series, a TV series that had some longevity and that maybe would shoot in LA, to me, that would be a dream come true, because I could come home every night, enjoy through what I'm doing. So I didn't care if it was TV, film, I liked it all. I'm an actor. The Brits are like that. They don't differentiate what the medium is. You just do what you do, as long as it's a good project. So I do this series. The first series I got was a thing called First Monday with James Garner. I basically took the job because Garner was going to do it, not who I idolized. It was about the Supreme Court. We only did 13 episodes. It wasn't a hit. Boom, gone. The next series I took, which was the year after, was a thing called Joan of Arcadia, which I loved. Beautiful show with Amber Tamblyn and Mary Steenburgen and whatever. We ran 2 seasons. Again, I loved doing it, but the show just didn't make it ultimately. But I remember on the last day of that series, I went to the studio where we were shooting up at, I think it was at Sony, and I'm packing up my stuff. And I noticed they're moving in all this other stuff that said Criminal Minds on it. And I said, what's this? They says, oh, they're coming in to shoot this new pilot of a series called, they're doing called Criminal Minds. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Out with the old, in with the new. And our whole crew, basically our whole crew from Joan of Arcadia was now going to go on this new show called Criminal Minds. Yeah. And I went, oh, well, that's great. And so I said goodbye to all the crew guys. I said, well, at least you guys got another job. Good luck. Now jump ahead 2 years. And 2 years later, I get a call basically saying, Mandy Patinkin, who's been, one of the stars of the show, has decided not to do season 3. And the producers are interested in possibly you coming in to, not do the exact same role, obviously, but to fill that kind of position. And they basically said, and when we brought your name up to the crew, the whole crew went like, Joe, because basically 90% of them were the guys from Joan of Arcadia. So I think that helped. So anyway, I went in, met with Ed Bernero, who was the showrunner, who was an ex-cop from Chicago, an Italian, and a White Sox fan. So I said, Ed, this is so perfect. I said, you're 2 out of 3 with me. You're Italian, you're from Chicago, but you like the White Sox. I said, I can live with that if you can live with me being a Cub fan. I said, but outside of that, there's nothing wrong with me doing this series. Let's do it. Not knowing, again, it's always a crapshoot. I liked the show. I watched some episodes of it. I thought this is a great ensemble. And I even told them, I said, don't put me at the head of the parade. So I said, think of me as Dr. Smith on Lost in Space. Let me be the elder guy on the show, but that I'm maybe a little bit of the curmudgeon and stuff. But I said, you've got an incredible ensemble here. This is not Magnum PI and I'm Magnum, or House, I'm the Dr. House. This is Criminal Minds. I'm one of the cogs in the wheel. But you got such strong characters here. And they, I think they were grateful for the fact that I wasn't coming in saying, yeah, I want to be, in every scene, and I wanted to, I want the big trailer and all that. No, look, this is all of your great television shows were great ensembles, no matter what they were. And as it turned out, I jumped in on season 3, and we wound up doing 13 years of it, beyond those initial 2 that I wasn't part of.
I think
and I loved it. And we're coming back. That's the other thing. We've been picked up now for Paramount Plus, and we're going to start filming new episodes in August.
Wow, I didn't know that, but I love the idea that the respect, not just from the crew, but that environment with that camaraderie, and that was a support thing producer wise. But I also love the idea that they listen to your input as David Rossi, the character, and saying, you know what, this is how I kind of feel this will flow, and you got this ensemble. That's a seasoned contribution. That's the emotional real estate that's taken in an ensemble like that, and all of a sudden being able to contribute. To me, that's fascinating that you were able to contribute that. And now you go forward from that, and you're coming back, which is exciting. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be super excited about that.
Warm water, massaging jets, backyard convenience, the relaxing hot tub experience you've been dreaming of could be just a click away. We're giving away a Master Spa's premium hot tub, energy efficient, innovative design, and made in the USA. Go to masterspas.com/big idea for a chance to win a Master Spas hot tub. Again, go to masterspas.com/big idea for your opportunity to live life the better way.
He gave me a book on art forgery. I found myself drawn to these old masters. How did these artists take paint from a palette, arrange it on a canvas? I began to unlock the secrets. I was a storehouse of knowledge of how to create an illusion, present it to a experienced expert, manipulate his mind, and convince him and bring him to the inevitable conclusion that the painting is genuine. We flooded the market with my paintings, and I couldn't believe what I did. I couldn't believe it. Then the dominoes started falling, and eventually the FBI were led to my door. They uncovered a mountain of evidence against me.
But they never actually got you. At this point, you've sold a lot. You've got like $1 million in cash. You sold one painting for $717,000. Why did it go away? Why did you never get indicted? And how are we having this conversation?
I guess that's the greatest story of all.
To hear how Ken Perenni made millions in art forgery, dodged the mafia and the FBI, subscribe to The Jordan Harbinger Show and check out episode 282 in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now.
The ultimate, well, not the ultimate, but one of the ultimate acknowledgments was in 2011 where you got the Hollywood Walk of Fame. When I was like, this is so cool. When I found out that your star was next to your boyhood hero, Errol Flynn, I have to ask the question, what was it like, and were you able to choose that location?
It was fantastic, and yes, that's why I'm next to Errol Flynn. In other words, yes, it was obviously it's a tremendous honor, to be when they call you and say, you know what, you've been selected to be on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Congratulations, blah blah blah. And I was like, wow, okay, thank you, terrific. So one of the questions I did ask was, now by any chance, do I have a choice where it goes? And not a lot of people ask, as it turns out, because ironically, just 2 weeks ago, I gave the speech for Jean Smart, who was a dear friend of mine. She got her star in the Walk of Fame. And I was one of the people that gave the speech for her. And I asked her, I said, where is it? When at the time she says, oh, I don't know. They told me what street it's on. Where on the street on Hollywood Boulevard. I said, you didn't pick it? She says, I didn't know you could pick it. I said, oh, yeah, you got to ask. I said, if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But I did ask. And what they said is, if anybody walks down the street, you can see that besides the names on the stars, every once in a while is a blank one, that they're going to fill later, whatever.
It's incredible.
What they told me, they said, if you can find a blank one that you like, you can have it. And so in my heart, I was thinking, there's only two guys that I kind of would like to be next to, either Errol Flynn, who was my childhood idol, because Robin Hood is still my favorite movie in the world, or Dean Martin, because I thought I played Dean. I got to, I never got to know him, but I know his family. I loved the role. So maybe Dean. But ultimately, when I saw that there was, and I don't think there was a blank one next to Dean's, as it turned out, but there was a blank one right next to Errol Flynn. And I thought, and it's right across the street from Musso and Frank's. So I said, you can always get something good to eat across the street at one of Hollywood's restaurants. It's right across the street. But I was just lucky to draw. So I chose to pick that one, which I did. And it's right next to Errol Flynn. And then if you jump ahead a few years, Peter Falk and I became very, very close friends because he toured with me for 6 months with the play Glengarry Glen Ross, the national tour after Broadway. And we stayed friends right up until he passed. And Peter never, they awarded him the star at a Walk of Fame back in the 70s, but he never followed through. You got to follow through. They say, we're going to give you a star. You got to go, you got to pick the day. You got to show up. You got to do. Peter was one of those guys like, I get to it. Never did. So he passed away. And since they give them up posthumously, I made it my goal to get him his star because I thought he has to be on that street just for his fans. So I made that happen. You know, you have to go out. You get the studio because like the I think CBS they pick. There's money that has to change hands that to pay for this kind of stuff. Usually, the people you work for pick it up. Like for my case, I think it was CBS because Criminal Minds picked up the cost. So I got the people who had done Columbo, both originally and who had done the syndication, to kind of pitch in to pay for the star. And since they said, "Where do you want it?" I said, "Well, there's another empty spot on the other side of where I'm at. Let's put him there." And I asked his wife. She said he would like nothing better than that. So they did that. I gave the speech. I brought in Paul Reiser and Ed Begley Jr., who I knew both knew Peter as well, and asked them to give speeches. And then I gave the speech in place of Peter himself. And so I've got Errol Flynn, me, Peter Falk. We're all in the same strip there, and I think Debbie Reynolds is somewhere right around us too, so I'm in good company.
A couple minutes left here. I know you obviously exciting news about Paramount Plus and Criminal Minds. You've got Gun Stories on the Outdoor Channel, and upcoming. I want to give a plug to your good friend Gary Sinise and the National Memorial Day concert that you do every year.
Right.
Can we turn that off real quick, Ray? We're just continuing, Joe. I just want to take something and turn it off real quick. But but let's talk about that, because that is a very, very special day in America.
Yeah, it is, and this will be my 21st year doing it now. And last 2 years we had to do it virtually, Gary and I, but now we're going to be back on the West Lawn of the Capitol, and there's no even describing it. To stand on that stage and that there's 200,000 people sometimes in front of you, and the Capitol's there, the flag's flying. And I'm not a political person. I've all my life I've stayed out of politics in the sense that I'm an independent, because my feeling is I don't want to align totally with one side, because then it negates everything about the other side, and I don't feel that way. So that's why I align with the military, because the military is there for all of us. And they follow, luckily we live in a country where we have the freedom to vote. So go ahead, vote your conscience, and just know the people you vote for ultimately control things like what the military does and the people that are going to, ensure and protect our freedoms. So I go where as the military goes. And so to do that concert every year, and it's every time I'm on that stage, I realize it's not a performance, it's not acting. We're recounting history, because we're telling these stories of men and women who have sacrificed their lives. It's Memorial Day. That's what it's all about. And then, that's why they purposely don't invite the President of the United States ever to the concert, because they don't want it to all have a political bend to it. There's representatives from both sides. So the Senate's from Republicans, Democrats, whatever. But that's what's great about it. To me, it's America at its finest hour, showing that over 200 plus, whatever years since 1776, we're still hanging in there. We don't get it always right, and there's still problems and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, all you got to do is read the Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence, and you know that it's all there. That's the right idea.
Years ago, you made the transition. I just had this moment in my head right now. Like, I could just see you, like, you made the decision years ago to go from the bands and the rock and roll into the theater. Can you imagine? There you are with the bass guitar and your vocals in front of 200,000 people, and you got the rock star moment all over again.
Oh yeah. And ironically, the very first concert I did was 2002. It was right after 9/11, and the speech I had to give the words of 3 New York firemen who had all lost their sons in 9/11. I'm on the stage with the Washington Symphony Orchestra playing behind me. On the screens, they're showing planes flying into the World Trade Center. And I'm having lines to say, like, with 200,000 people in front of me, I'm saying lines like, "It's a good day when they find a scrap of your son's uniform, in the rubble." And those four firemen sitting in the front row with their wives in their dress uniforms, the parents. And that's when you realize my knees would shake. And I realized, oh my God, this is like, that's why I knew I wanted to do this. If they would want me, I said, I'll do this as long as you guys want me to do it. And as it turned out, Ozzie Davis, who used to be the host, passed away about a year or so later. They asked me to take over as host. I said, I'll take over as host, but let me bring in my dear friend Gary Sinise, who does more for the military than any other person in Hollywood. He came in. Gary had the same feeling I did, and we've been co-hosting it now for, going on 18 years together.
It's an incredible event. You do a marvelous job. It's goosebumps every year.
Yeah, it's PBS.
At least if you have a poll, goosebumps.
Yeah, it's PBS. They tell me it's PBS's. Last year was PBS's most watched show that they do, and it's. I'm just happy. I'm glad of that for no other reason that I think it is one of those shows that it unites our country. It really does in a really good way.
That's awesome. Well, I can't. I mean, literally, thank you 100 times over. This is a great show, a great story, motivational. I mean, you're just one of the most incredible human beings that I know, and I mean that with all my heart.
Yeah. Dave.
And
takes one to know one, pal.
You're very, very kind, my friend. I really appreciate that. So,
I do want to finish one other thing, though. There is one other show that I did. It's only because I feel so strongly about this show. I did this series called As We See It. That's on Amazon Prime. And it was 8 episodes created by Jason Katims, the guy who created Friday Night Lights and Parenthood. And it's about 3 young adults on the autism spectrum. And that's why it's so important to me, because the 3 actors who play the role are all on the spectrum. And plus, we had 12 people on our crew on the spectrum. And you can find it on Amazon Prime. And we'll know, actually, the deadline is May 16th for Amazon to let us know if we're going to do a second season, which I would be able to do even though I'd be doing Criminal Minds. But it's such a beautiful show that Jason put together. The writing is so great because it really is it's a dramatic show. It's not a documentary or anything, but these 3 actors, all 3 of them are on the spectrum, but they're so tremendous. And the scripts were so great. And they're 8 half-hour episodes you can find, anybody who has that interest in it. And I'm just very proud of that show. And I just hope if it winds up, all we did was the 8, so be it. But I'm hoping that one gets a chance to go too, because they got their heart in the right place by hiring, like I said, people on the crew on the spectrum. We shot it, most of it up at Universal. So it wasn't like, they didn't cut any corners. We had a representative on the set every day from a group called the Miracle Project to just act as a liaison to make sure everybody, and it was just so beautiful to see people, especially being a parent of a special needs child. It meant the world to me. And it just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think it's marvelous. I've been actually a supporter, very good friends with Holly Robinson Pete and
right.
Jenny McCarthy from The View, and I've contributed over the years in many, many ways, and that's something we should talk about also as well. Any way I can help you in that side of it with other things that I'm doing, because that elevating that story and people going to Amazon Prime and watching that it's going to raise the awareness level to where it needs to be, because it's that spectrum is very challenging, and it goes literally in different spectrums. So I want everybody to go out and watch it, because it's got your finger on it and your touch and your feelings. So that's a great thing. Thanks for coming on, Joe.
Thank you, my friend. Hey, my pleasure, Dave. You're one of the good guys, I tell you, and I've enjoyed this.